The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen Show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You can count on us, we're the Custody Queens. Yeah, you can count on us, we're the Custody Queens.
All right, Go Country. This is Sam McBride with the Custody Queens. Happy Saturday. We are missing my partner in crime, Miss Holstrom, but we have Carrie Block from Holstrom Block and Park. I'm sure you guys all remember her from previous episodes. Thank you for coming back to join me today, Carrie.
Thank you for having me back. It's always a barrel of fun.
And we are back for part 2 with Fred, and I'm going to butcher his last name, so bear with me here. He had me practicing it before we started. Thiagarajah.
Perfect.
I did it right. All right, so you guys may remember Fred from last week's episode, but Fred is founder and principal attorney for Right Choice Law, a group of former prosecutors all dedicated to criminal defense. Welcome back, Fred. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here again.
All right, so before we get into it, you guys may remember that Kristen and I have sort of come up with this new fun game called CQ Box, which is basically a bunch of questions that we all get to kind of sit around and start some icebreakers on. So are you guys ready for them?
Shoot.
Who wants to start it off? Fred or Carrie?
I'll let Fred do it. He's our guest.
All right, Fred, we're going to jump in here and we're going to get deep. If you could change anything about how you were raised, what would it be?
I'm Sri Lankan by ethnicity, so it's part of South Asia. And maybe like a lot of Asian parents who are obsessed with education, there are some negative consequences of that. I think maybe I would have preferred not being locked in closets and made to memorize lists of vocabulary words. I don't know. I might have had a more joyous childhood.
But look at you now in a sharp suit.
Yes, and my vocabulary is quite extensive as well.
All right, Carrie, how about you?
So I'm actually doing something to change something that I regretted from my childhood. I was brought up Jewish, and boys have a bar mitzvah and girls usually have a bat mitzvah. But my family was more religious and did not believe at that age that girls should have one. And I've actually been going through an educational program through my temple. And in August of this year, I'm actually going to have a bat mitzvah. It's some 40 years later, but
Wahoo.
Hey, and I keep asking my parents, so are you going to pay the same amount you paid for my brother's bar mitzvah? Or are you going to have the DJ and the band and the cake? And they're like, we will do anything. So we're trying to figure it out, but I'm preparing.
I love it. All right, I'm going to skip myself because why not? I'm making
no,
the rules
that's not
today.
fair. You have to answer as well.
All right, I'll answer. So if I could change anything about how I was raised, what would it be? I don't know. I guess it's a corny answer, but probably nothing. And that not that my childhood was perfect. It definitely wasn't. But I often joke that I'm where I am today, and it's a series of accidents. Never planned on going to college, but then some soccer coach came up to me and was like, hey, do you want to go to college? And I was like, that sounds cool. And so my whole life has been that way. So I would say good job, Mom and Dad, for messing me up just in the right way to get me where I am today.
Sometimes parents are good at messing their kids up
Just
the right way.
Just the right amount of anxiety and work ethic. It came right out. All right, so I'm going to ask another one of these questions, and then we'll get into it. I'm going to ask you, Carrie, first. If you could start any business, and don't say law, don't do that. If you could start any business, what would it be and why?
That's a good question. I think it would be some type of party planning business. I enjoy parties and having a good time, and I love planning parties, and I actually have a fellow divorce attorney that is engaged, and she has been delaying her wedding for many, many years, and I keep saying, I'll do your prenup and plan your wedding. So that's kind of, I enjoy.
Nice contrast.
So it could go together.
Yeah, you could plan the wedding and handle the divorce.
Yes.
Full service.
Well, see, I started in a positive and said I do the prenup, with the wedding.
You
Then
can do
I
it
could
all.
do the divorce later on.
Prenup, wedding, divorce.
I'm all compassed.
full service. All right, I like it. All right, Fred.
Let's see. I think I'd like to start, maybe some kind of online dating company.
Okay.
And then I could say, hey, I'm not just the founder, but I'm also a member.
There you go. All right, that's cool.
Well, and that could also relate to the divorce practice that we could refer our clients right
at
over
you.
to you.
Cross-marketing.
I mean, we are like crossing everything here.
If I could start any business, what would it be? I would probably do some adventure tours. Something with a lot of liability that would probably get me sued, like shark diving, whatever. Probably something like that, something fun and relaxing. All right, so let's get into it. I know last time Fred was here, we were talking about criminal law, crossovers, and just sort of diving into it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So as I mentioned last week, I'm a former prosecutor, former deputy district attorney. I was a deputy district attorney for 4 years, and then I switched over to the defense side, and now I've been doing defense for 20 years. So in total, in criminal law, both prosecution and defense, it's been 24 years. When I graduated from USC for law school.
Okay.
And I grew up in LA, so I've been in Southern California almost all my life.
Nice. So I kind of see this trend a lot, and I don't know if I'm just making this up, but people start out as prosecutors and they end up as defense attorneys, and you're smiling at me. Why?
I think that, regardless of what kind of law you're in, whether it's family or criminal, when you're coming out of law school and you're trying to start your own practice, it's very challenging. It's challenging to learn the law, and it's also challenging to run a business. So you have these dual challenges that you're dealing with. That's why it's probably advisable for most people who come out of law school to work for an organization or a law firm or get the ropes, learn the ropes of that particular business. So I ended up joining the DA's office, and it was an amazing experience. I love being a defense attorney, but I had a great foundation with the district attorney's office. I really got to learn the ins and outs of criminal law. In 4 years, I knocked out 60 jury trials, so I got a lot of experience, handling criminal cases. And then that gave me a solid foundation to sort of practice law. And now the only challenge I have to deal with, of course, is running a business, as I'm sure you're both aware of.
Right.
But, in terms of my knowledge of the law, I started off on a strong plateau, having worked for the DA's office. And then there's an added benefit, which is, I now know those prosecutors, and I know how they think, and I know how they approach cases. So when I talk to them, and I come at them, and I'm trying to negotiate on behalf of my clients, I already know how to frame my clients and how to put them in the best light, because I know when I know how a DA reads the police reports. I know what facts they're looking at. I know what issues they're examining. And so I use my knowledge from the DA's office. I use that to now on the other side to get my clients the best resolutions possible.
I love that.
It's similar in family law when you, in some cases, represent the mother and some you represent the father. You get both sides of it to know, or if you're representing the victim of domestic violence or the accused of domestic violence in a restraining order hearing, you get to get both sides of it, and it's good not to be focused just on one thing, that you can understand it from different perspectives.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Carrie. So, Fred, tell us something cool about yourself.
Let's see, something cool about myself.
I'm all over the place with my questions, if you were wondering.
Yeah, no worries. I'm trying to think that something that I could share that is acceptable for public radio.
I feel like that was an answer.
Yeah. I love to travel.
Okay.
I've been to, certainly over a dozen countries. Let's see.
Favorite country you visited?
Definitely Australia is the country where I've been the most intoxicated. So I don't know if that counts.
Do you remember it?
Well, it was a series of episodes, so yes, yeah.
All right. Carrie, have you visited anywhere that you would say was your favorite place?
My favorite place that my husband and I have gone was where we went on our honeymoon, which was St. Martin, the island. And we've been back now 3 times since then. It's just, it's dual citizenship of Dutch and French. So you get kind of 2 different cultures, and it's just nowhere. And you don't have to worry about the world and life, and you just get away. So we love it there.
You know, I wanted to mention, this is a bit of a tangent, but I have a lot of cousins from Australia. And one of my cousins was visiting me in Orange County, and he went out with his friends. I dropped him off at a bar. Then I get a call late at night from the Irvine Police Department. My cousin and his buddy are in jail. So I went to go, I went to talk to the police officers, and they let my cousin out into my custody. And I asked him, what happened? He's like, we got drunk and we were walking around and police rolled up on us and said we were drunk in public. And my cousin was saying, I don't understand what the crime is. That's what happens in Australia. So anyway, so that kind of relates back to
why you like Australia.
Why I like Australia.
That's great. All right, so where do you practice?
My office is in Newport Beach.
Okay.
And so I specifically handle cases mostly in Orange County. But as I mentioned on last week's episode, I've got a team of prosecutors that work with me, and they are all prosecutors from different counties. So one of them was a former prosecutor out of Los Angeles County, one's a former prosecutor out of Ventura. We work with people who are former prosecutors in Riverside, San Bernardino, and San Diego. So no matter where the case is in Southern California, if you end up coming with our firm, we're going to be able to assign to you a defense attorney who is a former prosecutor, and
that's quite unique.
And that's, hopefully, yes. And then that person will be able to bring all the same sort of advantages and skills that I had mentioned earlier with having a former prosecutor who's a defense attorney.
So if any of our listeners want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
My main number at our Newport Beach office is 949-265-7005. And our website is www.rightchoicelaw.com.
What would you say, Fred, is the hardest part of being a criminal defense attorney?
There's lots of challenges, as you might be aware, in both in family law and criminal law. I think sometimes some of my cases involve very serious consequences. And it's difficult to have conversations with clients and their families when the choices that we have to decide between aren't good and bad, but what is really bad and what is really, really bad. Without disclosing names, I can say right now I'm dealing with a client for which the maximum penalty on his charges is 70 years, 70. And the prosecutor has made an offer of 30 years. We're trying to, counter at 20 years. And these are really big numbers. I mean, I personally couldn't handle 20 days in jail, let alone 20 years in prison. And so, and this is for a young man who's never been to prison before. And so having these conversations with him and his family is very difficult.
Mm-hmm. I could see that being really difficult. And it's similar that we have really difficult conversations about getting restraining orders against you and how it could affect your custody and the rest of your life. It's all difficult conversations, and you need to have a good attorney, whether it be in a criminal situation or a family law, that sets your expectations and lets you know what the different possibilities of what can happen are.
I actually think that your jobs are, in some ways, much more emotionally challenging than mine. When my clients are, my clients, I suppose, can lose their liberty, but I think that pales in comparison to when someone could lose custody of their children. I think, that emotion is far more raw, and so my hat's off to the both of you.
Thank you. So, Carrie, let me actually ask you a question, because I know that we do see this. What is your approach if you get a case where the other side is incarcerated?
And I've had some of those situations, and I'm assuming we're talking about a situation where there's children and how the children are involved. And a lot of that is dependent on the age of the children. At a certain age, you're able to explain to them about their parent being incarcerated and what it would be like. Younger children, it's very difficult for them to understand that, very difficult for them to be taken to that type of situation and see it. So it depends, but that's an individual choice, and also it's dependent upon what they're incarcerated for. If it's a case that maybe they're incarcerated because of domestic violence against the spouse and or the children, then obviously that's a completely different situation than if they're incarcerated for something that has nothing to do with their relationship.
Okay, so Carrie, what other overlaps do you see between criminal law and family law? I know last week I was unfortunately gone, but you guys talked a little bit about the domestic violence crossover. Do you see any other crossovers happen in cases?
Well, there's definitely crossovers. I had a situation where a client got a DUI when we were in the middle of a custody discussion with the other side, and it hadn't quite risen to the level of litigation yet. We were trying to work things out, and I immediately had my client call Fred so he could help the gentleman deal with the DUI aspect. And any DUI is not a good thing, but thank goodness the kid was not in the car so that we didn't have to deal with that aspect, because it would be a completely different situation in case if you're driving drunk with your child in the car than if you're driving drunk by yourself. And so that's any type of thing that you would do that would endanger yourself and or your children is something that's going to come into a custody case.
And can you explain a little bit as to why that would come into a custody case when the court is considering best interest and going through that analysis?
Well, if you are not taking care of yourself and your situation, even if you're driving on your own, that you are that intoxicated and you still think you can drive a car, a judge would question your ability to care for your children. And if you have some kind of drinking problem, that maybe there needs to be orders and testing regarding your utilization of alcohol.
Now, even though if you do have a problem, and even if this does occur, all hope is not lost. So, with the right attorneys on your side, you may be able to mitigate, some of these unfortunate circumstances, both having a good criminal lawyer to, lower your penalties in court, as well as having a good family lawyer, like the custody queens, to be able to explain to the court why, custody might still be appropriate, or what steps you can take to show that you're rehabilitating and to preserve as much visitation as possible.
Correct. And it's important, I think, also for the criminal lawyer and the family lawyer to work hand in hand in that situation to make sure that the statements that the person's making are consistent and to make sure that everybody's aware. And the one thing in the case I'm thinking of that the client did perfectly right was as soon as it happened, he called and let me know and said, can you help me find a criminal lawyer? Can you help me deal with this? Not that a lot of people like to think that if I don't talk about it and I don't say it, maybe it won't come out. Nobody will know. Well, that's the wrong choice because people find things out. So instead, tell your lawyer, let them help you find the right criminal attorney if you need it, and deal with the problem in a way that is consistent and helps you best mitigate any damages.
And thank you both, Carrie and Fred, for saying that, because it's exactly right. A lot of times when you're going through a family law case, there is also an underlying criminal case going on and vice versa. And it's really important to make sure that you have a very experienced attorney in that field. And Kristen and I always talk about this, but it's very, very important that you get to an attorney fast, because a lot of times, unfortunately, although we can help you at any stage in your case, the later you come to us, the more likely you've made a mistake that we would have told you not to make. And I'm sure that you agree with that, right, Fred?
Absolutely. And actually, in California, just kind of sort of circling back here, taking drinking and driving, for example, as soon as you get arrested for a DUI, you have 10 days to request a hearing with the DMV or you lose your driver's license. So right off the bat, there are some hard deadlines in place that you need to be aware of, and it's important to, contact an attorney as soon as possible to preserve your rights.
Absolutely. All right, Fred, so tell us something about criminal law that you think our listeners don't know.
One of the things I think that this common perception is that criminal law is all about going to trial. I have done a ton of trials, but the reality is 99% of our cases are negotiations. And the vast majority of cases do not go to trial. I'd say like less than 1% of cases actually end up in trial. So it's good to have a good trial lawyer on your side, but what you also need is someone who is a good negotiator. Again, as a former prosecutor, I think that those skills have helped me become a good negotiator because I know what the other side wants and I know how they're approaching cases. But I think that's a common misconception is that, criminal cases or maybe even family law cases go to trial. The reality is that 99.9% of cases settle, and what you want is someone who is effective at getting you the best resolution for settlement or trial.
And family law is very similar in that people think you're going to go to trial on every single issue. And usually a potential client will come to me and say, what's your win-loss record? Well, I don't have a win-loss record because there's maybe 20 issues in a family law case. And so if we settle 18 of them and 2 of them go to trial, what is that? How does that calculate a win-loss? And that's what often happens in family law as well. The judges are pushing you to settle as many of the issues as you can. And then ultimately, yes, there are things that can't be settled and those go to trial.
I was going to say one thing interesting though, and this applies to both family and criminal, is even though most cases are settled through negotiation, you do want to have someone that is willing to go to trial and is good at trial as your, as a backup.
And part of that's your reputation, right? If someone knows that you can go to trial, they may consider negotiating with you a little differently.
And if they know that you will avoid trial at all costs, then they're going to take advantage of your client. So what you need is, obviously you want to negotiate to the best of your ability, but not be afraid to roll up your sleeves and get dirty.
I agree with that completely. And, this isn't really exclusive to custody, but part of what Carrie and I do, and Custody Queens in general, Kristen definitely does this with our clients, is we go through a cost-benefit analysis with trial. A lot of times in divorce cases, we're going through assets, right? And we have to consider with our clients, and it's something that the Custody Queens do all the time, is, hey, what's the cost of trial versus the benefit and the potential benefit? So if you have questions regarding, a lot of times we get people that say, hey, I want to go to trial, I want to go after my ex. Again, call an attorney quick. Let's go through a case plan. Let's create a custom case plan for you, and the Custody Queens can do that for you if you give us a call at 1-800-419-7772. That's 1-800-419-7772. So Fred, what got you into criminal law?
I'm not good at anything else. No,
Fabulous answer.
When I left law school, I worked very briefly for a civil law firm. I didn't like it, and one of my best friends was a DA at the time, and she told me, "Listen, come work for the DA's office. You're not going to make as much money, but you're going to get a chance to be in court, to be arguing all the time." And I've always felt that sort of my skill set lies in, oral advocacy and being in court and arguing in front of a judge, thinking on my feet. So I joined the DA's office and I loved it. And I loved being in court all the time and trying cases. But I also always dreamt of being my own business, having my own business and being my own boss. So when I left the DA's office, it seemed like a natural switch to go into the defense side of things since I was already familiar with criminal law.
Nice. The interesting thing is my story was similar, but the reverse. So I went to law school and I said, I'm going to go be a criminal defense attorney because, interestingly enough, my Uncle Fred is a criminal defense attorney. So I worked for him through law school, and I was like, all I know is I don't want to be a criminal defense attorney. That's all I know for sure. And then I found Kristen and I said, hey, this ended up being my passion. I love being in court, but yeah, man, I'll tell you, criminal law made me go hard left into family law. So Carrie, what got you into family law?
So I, like many, many law students, was in law school my first year and had no idea what I was going to do. And first year law school, very difficult to find a job. and my grandmother had been a nanny for a gentleman that was a family lawyer in LA. And she said to him, "Hey, my granddaughter's in law school." And I went and worked with him and loved it immediately. I had a background with a psychology degree in undergrad, and it utilized my psychology aspect because we are counselors still and counseling our clients, but I use the law and the argument and the advocacy, and I love that it's all different parts of the law that you're dealing with. You can be dealing with a domestic violence that's criminal in nature and custody the next day and a high asset divorce the next day. So it's always something different.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's the same with criminal law, but we are never bored in family law. I often say I've seen it all, and then the new thing I haven't seen shows up at the door.
My husband's a lawyer as well, and my children always said, "Mom's stories are a lot better at the dinner table than Dad's stories." So, but they are both in law school and neither going into family law right now. So I guess the stories weren't that good.
All right, so before we wrap up today's show, I do want to do another segment. It's called Notes to Your Younger Self. And I am going to put Fred in the hot seat because you're our guest, so naturally that's the polite thing to do. So Fred, if you were to give your younger self, baby Fred, advice, what would it be?
Other than not getting married to my ex. Let's see.
That would be an interesting thing to go tell baby Fred.
Actually, I would tell younger self that a couple of things. Number one is your studies aren't as important as my parents made them out to be. I mean, certainly, doing well in school is valuable and learning is valuable, but I think there's a phrase like EQ is more important than IQ. Being social, being empathetic, seeing where people come from is a much more valuable skill set to have.
I agree.
And the second thing, actually, I would tell younger self, besides in investing in Bitcoin and Google, is is be open-minded about what opportunities come your way. When I graduated from law school, a judge had given a speech at our graduation ceremony, and she had said that, if you look at your life, you'll see that if you go back 5 years, you may never have imagined what you're doing now 5 years ago, right? And I'm certainly look back at my life and I realized that's exactly the case. I was a DA for 4 years. A year before that, I never would have thought, I'm going to be a defense attorney instead of a prosecutor. So I would tell younger self, just be more open to whatever opportunities may present themselves. You can't, you gotta have an open mind about these things, and you just never know, what kind of exciting or adventure might be around the road, or, business opportunity or friendship or whatever the case might be. So that's probably the advice.
I think that's a great answer. Carrie, you have 30 seconds to answer. You're basically off the hook because we're out of time.
Oh, darn. No, I think you're off the hook, actually. But I would tell my younger self not to take everything so seriously, to enjoy life a little more, and things are going to happen that you can't control, and worrying about them isn't going to change them sometimes. So take it a little easier.
Great answer. Well, thank you, Fred. It went by way too fast. We'll have to have you on again. Can you tell our listeners one more time how they can get a hold of you?
Yes, you can visit my website, www.rightchoicelaw.com. That's RIGHTCHOICELAW.com, or call us at 949-265-7005.
And if any of you guys out there have questions for the Custody Queens, please feel free to give us a call at 1-800-419-7772. That's 1-800-419-7772. And remember, let love rule.